آله سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. Apparently I was supposed to give a verse about the life of Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad, and I can't continue without completing what I've been taught to do, so I will fulfill what I've added to Sayyid Muhammad Al-Haddad, his request to say a few words about Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad. What I'd try to do is to try and relate some of the lessons from his life. So of course, alhamdulillah, he was born in Qaidun, which is generally known as the wadi of the area of Hadramaut. And Qaidun is where he was born, and he was born to a descendant of Imam Al-Haddad, Sayyidatina Safir Al-Haddad. And I mention her first because his father comes from the descendants of the brother of Imam Al-Haddad, Sayyid Umar Al-Haddad. And his brother comes as a descendant of Habib Abdul bin Ali Al-Haddad. And it's interesting that his first teacher is his mother. His first teacher is his mother. And his mother used to, as she was feeding him, would recite the Quran from the point that she starts. So the first feed would be Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. And then he should go on to Surah Al-Baqarah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim Dhalik Al-Kitab. And when she finishes, she stops. That would be the point where she starts the next feed. So that every feed she would be continuing with the khatam of Quran. So his Quran was from the beginning. So here there's two lessons here. Is the role of the Quran in the life of the awliya. Is that Sayyidina Abdul Al-Sagaf Al-Kabir, one of the great early scholars of Tariqah, he said that whoever wishes, whoever does not find fil Quran ma yurid, that which he wishes for, laysa bi murid. He's not one of the murids. A murid is one who finds in the Quran everything that he wishes for. So the Quran is actually the foundation of the spiritual path. If it's not from the Quran, its source is not the Quran, then it's not our path. Everything comes from the Quran. So the first thing Imam Habib Ahmed Masyhur had was literally drinking from the Quran, from the fountain of Quran. So this is how he started. Now he took from all of the teachers around him, but of that very early childhood, probably the greatest of the scholars that he took from was Habib Ahmed bin Hassan Al-Attas. And the reason why he takes this, he among all of the great scholars that he studied under, takes the greatest position, is because he went there to learn the Fatiha. He went to learn the Fatiha from this great Qari. And of all the things that he passed on to this generation, the most important thing that he passed on was the Fatiha of the Quran. And the Fatiha is the essence of the Quran, as the hadith describes. Many years later, when he came to Zanzibar, he was asked if he would do a dars after Taraweeh. And they said, start with Quran. So he says, okay, we'll start with the Fatiha. He says, inshallah, you'll finish the Fatiha and then you'll do Baqarah. He says, no, inshallah, we'll finish the Fatiha. And how far did he get in the whole month of Ramadan? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. 1 month. Why? Because the Quran, the Fatiha, is the essence of the Quran. The better you understand the Fatiha, the better you understand everything else. So the most important thing that he learned from Habib Ahmed bin Hassan Al-Attas was the Fatiha. And of course, this again reinforces the importance of the Quran in the children's lives. Alhamdulillah, after that he then studied all of the knowledges. And it's interesting, this is where the connection to this part of the world comes. Because he then started to grow up under the tutelage of the great scholars of Qaidun. And of course, the greatest scholar of the time was a great scholar called Alawi bin Tahir Al-Haddad, who later is known as Sahib Johor. Though he's not Sahib of Johor, he's for the Mufti of Johor, who then, after Habib Ahmed Masyhur reaches about the age of 14 or 15, Habib Alawi bin Tahir Al-Haddad is then asked by the Sultan of Johor to come to settle here, and it's here that he writes his book of Fatawa in what is now Malaysia, in Johor. And so when Habib Ahmed Masyhur had then in effect soaked up all the knowledge of Hadramaut, he then came to Johor, he came to the east. So his first major rihla when he was 17 years old was, first of all, interestingly, to Bogor in Java, because this is where some of the Al-Haddad had already settled. So he went first to Bogor, and that's where he married, and then he came and he settled in Johor, studying under Abdul bin Tahir Al-Haddad, who is well known and of course is an icon, so to speak, of what Islamic tradition is in this part of the world. Alhamdulillah, after this connection to the east, he has connections to many places, and probably there's no point in me talking about Habib Ahmed Masyhur in the east because you know better than I do. But perhaps what you don't know about is the connection with East Africa. Maybe that East Africa has got this very strong connection, but you have to put it in context. If you go to East Africa now, Lil-Asaf, sadly, there's not a great deal left. And the last time I was there, actually, it was quite sad because I was trying to get out before the Mawlid took place, so that I didn't get caught up in the fitna of the Mawlid. That's how sad East Africa has been. But in the olden days, in the time of Habib Ahmed Masyhur bin Al-haddad, people came from Hadramaut to study in Africa, in particular in Zanzibar. There's one story of the Mufti of Hadramaut, I think it's Abdullah al-Sigaf, Sayyid Abdullah al-Sigaf, who was known as the Mufti. So he was the Mufti, and he came to Zanzibar to connect to the ulama of Zanzibar. And it's interesting, there was an imam in one of the mosques, mu'adhin in one of the mosques, who had not the most beautiful of voices. Not like the... He had a beautiful voice in its own way, but it wasn't as melodious. So when the Grand Mufti came, they said, "Look, please, would you mind giving the adhan to so-and-so? He's got a beautiful voice, he's a qari." So when the Mufti came, the Mufti of Tarim arrived, this qari read, he said, whoa, wait a minute. Where's the mu'adhin? And they says, he's the mu'adhin. He says, no, he's not. I want the proper mu'adhin. So he told the imam of the masjid to call the proper mu'adhin. And then they realized what had happened. He says, we hear him in Tarim. We hear him in Tarim. This is how strong the connection was. So Habib Ahmed Masyhur then left the east from this part of the world to head to the Comoros, to Zanzibar, to Mombasa. And of course, that's what I'm saying. This is a place where people went to study. So although he was one of the greatest ulama, it's interesting, he left Hadramaut after completing his studies with everybody. There's nobody left for him to study with. Then he came here, and then he went to Africa to complete his studies. And this shows the status of these ulama. But he was still a young man. So he travelled up the coast to a place called Lamo, which is famous for its kufiyas, and other things. And one of the great scholars of Lamo is a man called Habib Salih Jamal Al-Layl. And really, Kenya is often thought of as a almost Muslim country. But before Habib Salih Jamal Al-Layl established the dawah, Islam was limited to Arabs. There weren't African Muslims, and most of the Africans saw Islam as the slave traders, the Muslims as the slave traders. There was no love for Islam. There was no love for the Arabs. They treated Africans badly, and it was only when Habib Salih started to do his dawah that Islam started to spread. And now many tribes have become Muslim, so much so that we don't even consider the Pokomo and Oromo, these tribes, to be separate tribes. We call them all the part of the Swahili people, because they all become Muslim, and they became Muslims with Habib Salih Jamal Al-Layl. So Habib Salih was very famous for giving. He was very, very poor. If you look to his house, you just see the humility of this man. But he was a giant in the Deen. And just to reinforce the connection between Hadramaut, just a few days ago, a couple of days ago here in Kuala Lumpur, we did the whole of Habib Ali bin Muhammad bin Hussein al-Habashi. Now, Habib Ali Al-Habshi never met Habib Saleh. They never met each other, but they were unique. The connection was so strong that, alhamdulillah, I've been to Sayoun and I've been to Lamu, and in the olden days there was no difference. Even the tunes, the patterns, everything was exactly the same. The connection could not have been stronger. And there was an occasion in Sayoun where Habib Ali Habshi disappeared from the Mawlid. They were reading the Mawlid and he disappeared. He got up and he left. And he came back and his clothes were dark, as if he dirtied his clothes, and he completed the Mawlid. This is recorded in the people of Sayoun recorded this happened. The people of Lamu recorded that the mosque caught fire on such and such a date, and a man appeared in white clothes, a total stranger, and he put out the fire. And Habib Saleh says this was Habib Ali Habshi. So the connection was and so Habib Saleh was giant. And one day he was sitting waiting in his house in the mosque, and he stood up and he says, I have to go to the Puani, I don't know what Puani, the port, the Mina, where the boats come in. And he got up and he walked all the way to meet this boat coming. And this young man got off the boat. And he stood up and he himself sang a qasida, Lakum al-Bushra, Sa'ad wal-Bushra, which is a qasida of Imam al-Habshi. And the man that came off the boat was Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad, the young boy that came off the boat, and he took him by his hand and he took him to the mosque and he asked Habib Ahmed Masyhur, this young man, to lead the salah for the old Sheikh. It's the only occasion in the adulthood of Habib Saleh that anybody else led the prayer. It was this young boy or young man from, and this is Habib Ahmed Masyhur. Habib Saleh died a few years later, and Habib Ahmed Masyhur travelled up and down and all around that area, and the number of people that became Muslim, it's impossible to count. Some estimated 100,000, I've heard 120, I've heard up to 300,000. But they became Muslim in communities, and I know I've seen some of them, some of the people that became Muslim at his hands, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. One man just looked at him and he says, I want whatever he's got. An African man he saw, whatever's on this man's face, this man, I want to follow him. And he just came to him and he says, who are you, what are you? He says, I'm a Muslim. He says, I want to be Muslim too. No intellectual discussion. I just want to be like you. And just by looking at Habib Ahmed Masyhur, because he embodied light, he embodied the Prophet ﷺ's behaviour. And another occasion he landed, and there was one of the security guards was a Sikh, and they were pushing him, and he says, just move back, look after this man, he doesn't belong to you, he belongs to humanity. He's our leader, and he's a Sikh. He's pushing the Muslims because he felt the Muslims didn't show good adab to this Sharif. And people who saw Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad in Africa saw something very different to what people, because alhamdulillah I had the blessing to live in Africa as well and see him in African context and see him in the Arab context. When he was very different, he had a much more open way. People could just come up to him, and not that he was difficult to approach in Jeddah, but the style, the life was very different, and he was just open to everybody. And he smiled, and his smile was enough to melt people. And the da'wah of Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad was not intellectual, it was spiritual. It was through his smile, it was through his gaze, it was through the way he talked to people, the way that he did, it was his posture. Sometimes his humility could be seen in the way that he stood. His humility could be seen in the way that he talked to people. His house, somebody posted a picture of his house, and I thought, you don't know what you're talking about. They posted on Facebook, and I decided I need to describe what this house was. It's not just a house. There was a door, and the door had a curtain. and the door would not be closed, it would be open with a slight curtain. And anybody that walked past would just be able to say, Hodi, which is like the Swahili greeting, can I come in? And he would say, Karibu, come on in. He wouldn't ask who's there. And he wouldn't think, is it Muslim? Is this person Muslim? Is this person a man? Is this person a woman? Marhaba, Karibu, come in. And then they would sit, they would drink tea. Sometimes that's all that would happen, then they'll go. So you get non-Muslim people just walking past the door just to stop and have tea and then go. And Habib would just be, sometimes he will close the door, which means that you need to wait. Why? Because perhaps he's talking something private, or he's got something more. But this is how his approach was. This is the real open door policy. And he had his dawah was. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just guides whoever He wishes. And He chooses people to be the vehicle for this guidance. And I know from my own experience that there's no logic to it. There's no logic to what happens. You give a beautiful speech and it doesn't affect anybody. You do something which you don't know and they become Muslim. I'll give you an example. I used to travel in London on the underground. And the underground is dirty, smelly, and it gets you from place to place. I didn't have a car, I had a bike. So if I went to an important gathering with a turban and a stick, I need to take a taxi, which isn't that often because I'm not that important. But occasionally I'd be asked to do a khutbah or do a wedding or something. So whenever I did this, I'd call a taxi, and the taxi would take me. You never think anything of this. And then one day, in the middle of the night, somebody comes banging on my door. Bang, 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 bang. I open the door, what's the matter? I want to become Muslim. I'm thinking, who is this guy banging on my door? He says, yeah, come on in. I need to become Muslim. Okay, do you want to come in? Yes, my wife is pregnant and I need to be Muslim. Okay, just calm down, whatever it is. She's pregnant, she's going to have a baby. This baby has to go to the garden. He can't be like us. He has to be Muslim. And he can't be Muslim if I'm not Muslim, so make me Muslim. I'm thinking, first of all, who are you? Second, how do you know where I live? And what makes you think I can make you Muslim? He says, you don't remember me? I'm really sorry. I was your taxi driver last month. I'm thinking, I know where you live. I picked you up from here and I took you to such and such a place, and now I want to be Muslim. And you have to help me. I said, okay. Tell me what, shall I calm down? Tomorrow we'll meet. I phoned Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad. And he has, subhanAllah, he doesn't always answer the phone himself. It's not as if he's got just, usually you have to go, this time picks it up. Naam! Yes? It's Abdul Aziz. Yes, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. Habib, somebody came to me. Yes, what did he say? Yes, what did he say? As if he knew exactly what had happened, but he wanted me to repeat the whole story to him. Naam. And he's Nigerian. Naam. Yoruba. Even knows his tribe. Naam. Tomorrow, you read this qasida, he will take shahada. This was a Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad. It's not, the dawah is not about being clever. If you want to spread Islam, it's not about being clever. It's not about knowing lots and lots of stuff. It's about being sincere and being loving towards people. He was intellectual because people talking about, I've just been talking politics with some Malaysians here, and they talked about the laws of related to the Qadianis and the laws related to Shia. I'm not interested in this. Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad, he would welcome everybody to his house. And there were many Shia who would come to the mosque, come to his house, but not Qadianis, because he's very clear. They were welcome to his house to talk, but it was clear that the Qadianis were not within the fold of Islam. But rather than go out and fight them, he taught. And wherever Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad stepped foot, there are no Qadianis. In Kampala, he had a public debate, public discussions, and then he went to the court and he explained to the court what Islam is, and they says, yeah, the Qadianis are not Muslim. He didn't go and attack Qadianis, he just explained what Islam was. So the dawah was correct. When he wrote Miftah al-Jannah, the famous book, The Key to the Garden, they criticized him to say that he didn't talk about jihad. And if you notice, the very last chapter, it doesn't fit into the overall flow of the book. It's as if the last chapter is an appendix. And the reason why was because he just wrote an explanation in answer to that, is that actually there's more to what you think of jihad. There's more to think of what you think of politics. There's more to running a society than what you think. They recognized him in Kenya so much that they wanted to make him the chief Qadi. And he refused. How did he refuse? He said, it's not appropriate for me to take this position, but I will take the nationality that you're offering me, because obviously he can't be the Grand Mufti unless he's the Chief Qadi, unless he takes nationality, and they offered him nationality. So I will take the nationality. This is out of respect to the country. And his nationality at the end of his life was Kenyan. And it was out of, not because he had a preference for one country over the other, but out of adab to the people who he was calling to. And likewise, of one of the tribes that became Muslim, the whole tribe became Muslim, and then the chief offered his daughter in marriage. So obviously, Habib, what does he do? If he rejects the daughter, he rejects the tribe. What did he do? He married her. He married her, and then he let her go. Why? So that she can say, I was married to the Sayyid. The marriage wasn't consummated, but she has the status, and therefore the chief of the tribe also has the status that his son-in-law was the Sayyid. So this is the kind of respect that he had to Muslims, non-Muslims, and how he dealt with even the groups that were on the edges of our theological basis, how he dealt with Wahhabis, how he dealt with all the different groups around, alhamdulillah, with wisdom, with kindness, and with real beauty in everything that he did. And I think I've talked too much.
Inshallah. My father asked you permission whether we can perform prayers. Okay, inshallah. But before we do that, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming to attend this gathering today. It's a special small gathering, especially done for Sheikh Aziz, because he actually requested me not to do a big gathering. So, but if we just invite some friends and families to be around tonight. I also I've got to, in a way, use this opportunity to do a bit of. Can you do that for me, Sheikh Aziz? Thank you.
I think what he wants me to do is just to mention a beautiful book, which compiles is basically a collection of poetry, a collection of poems, which expresses love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's written from the heart, in the same way that I was described by Habib Ahmed Masyhur Al-haddad. These are words which there's more than poetry. They take the form of poetry, but actually it's about love for the Prophet ﷺ. And I think it's a beautiful collection of poems, and I had the honour of being able to read them. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to comment on them before they were published, partly because I needed to really take them all in before I could say anything, and it took me quite a time to get into the state of appreciating the words. So I think it was an honour to have that, and I think Sayyid Abdullah can explain that.
The name of the book is called Love Sincerely. It's published by the Fajr, a group of sisters called Fajr Sisters, which is being led by my wife, my beloved wife. I think for all of you, you will get the intention of this book is not to make any profit whatsoever. Is to express our love towards the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and also to sell it in order to gain some profit for da'wah, and it's not for personal use whatsoever, and we don't gain anything from it. Inshallah, what we aiming to gain is for our gains in later life. So all of you, inshallah, will get a free copy of this. If you want to donate, you can do as you wish, but all of you will get a free copy of this. And please read it, and then please don't forget us in your dua. So you may take a copy before you leave, and you can assume that is a present from my father to all of you. Okay? Jazakallah khairan. I think what we'll do after this is we'll perform our Isha prayers, and then we'll have some meal, and we'll disperse inshallah around about 9:45 also, simply because my father has a dialysis tonight. It doesn't stop you, if you want to stay around to spend your time with Sheikh Aziz, you're more than welcome to do so. It doesn't mean that you have to leave this place of abode. So do that, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy, and hopefully we'll benefit from this gathering tonight. May Allah increase His mercy and increase our rest with this gathering, and may Allah prolong the life of Sheikh Aziz as well as my father. May Allah give the healing, the best of the healer, to my father, to all of us. May Allah take us out of any difficulties that we may have in our life, and may Allah strengthen our iman, increase our iman, and increase our darajah, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. Al-Fatiha.